Hello, my friends. A video here to tell you a little bit about the prenatal development and the newborn. So, talking about how we develop as humans and kind of that very first stage, just the whole beginning of it. There we go. So, prenatal development is referring to that time after conception when a baby is still developing in the womb. It runs essentially from that first moment of beginning to develop up to the fetus that is ready to be delivered. And it's a time period that really sets the stage for future psychological development. Easy for me to say. And these are major changes that can go all through childhood and affect you all through the rest of your life. So it's really important to kind of understand how this works. And during this time, we go from the fertilized egg to the fetus ready for birth. So something we need to talk about is what can affect a developing fetus. And that's something called a teratogen. These are agents, they can be chemical, they can be medical, but they are somehow agents that can affect the development of the child in the womb. And a teratogen is any agent, let me move over here, that causes abnormalities when a developing baby is exposed to it during pregnancy. And it can come from food, it can come from all manner of locations. And exposure can cause birth defects or other problems that can range from mild to severe, and they can affect a person all throughout their lifetime. One in particular that we will discuss, but first let me get to some examples of teratogens. I keep getting ahead of myself. They can include, click again, drugs such as prescription drugs, over-the-counter, even recreational drugs, illegal drugs, alcohol, cigarette smoke, infectious agents like rubella, varicella, listeria, things that you can catch as a parent. Physical agents that like radiation or hypothermia can affect the baby's development. Maternal health factors, like if the mom has diabetes or other like depression or other issues that can affect the baby. Environmental chemicals like mercury, herbicides, industrial solvents, these can all affect a child. No, not a teratogen is not a form of a dinosaur, so fortunately a lot less likely to affect a child. So the one I want to discuss in particular is called fetal alcohol syndrome. And fetal alcohol syndrome comes from a mother drinking alcohol during pregnancy. And the truth is we really don't know how much alcohol a mom needs to drink. So the reason they tell parents no alcohol is there have been cases of the mother having one drink during pregnancy, but it was just during that really critical point of change, and the child ends up with what's either called fetal alcohol syndrome or fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. So we've linked a number of disorders or a number of birth defects that can come from drinking while the mother is pregnant. But the most severe of which is called fetal alcohol syndrome. So the following birth defects can be found: small body and head size, learning and behavioral problems, and particular facial characteristics go along with fetal alcohol syndrome. For example, the shape of the face, the shape of the nose, the ears, their location, or their slight abnormalities. And these can affect the child all through their life as an adult. So really, truly, you think about it, I mean, this is such a small and simple thing as a mother not to drink while you are pregnant so that you can afford your child the best life throughout their life. So when newborn babies come out of the womb, you kind of think to yourself, oh my gosh, they must be so helpless. There must be things they can't do. But in reality, they actually come out pretty well prepared with something called reflexes. And reflexes are instinctive actions that don't have to be taught, that a baby knows how to do pretty much from birth. And they typically last anywhere from a few months to a year. And they are there as long as the baby does not have conscious control over that type of behavior. For example, eating, the reflexes will be there for the first 3 to 4 months until the child begins to develop a conscious control over it so they can start eating solid foods. So some normal newborn reflexes include the sucking and rooting reflexes. These are reflexes that help babies to find the food. If their cheek is touched, for example, they'll turn their face, or if something touches the palate of their mouth, they'll begin sucking because they are looking for something to eat. The Moro reflex, also called the startle reflex, is a reaction to an unexpected stimulus, loud noise, or a feeling of falling. And babies generally react by flattening themselves out. They kind of arch their back. They put their arms and their legs straight out. If they're falling, for example, that spreading of their limbs would actually give them the chance to, they'll fall slower because they won't be as aerodynamic. That's what I wanted. Not that we want to go around dropping babies. They also look startled, as you can see this little one looks in the picture, and they kind of move for a second, and then they'll relax and find out what's going on. You also have what's called the palmar grasp, which is where if you put your finger or touch a baby's palm, they will grab at it. It's not that they consciously recognize, hey, I can reach out and touch things. It's that they cling on to the mother. Over time, as the baby realizes, hey, I can actually use my hands, reach out and grab something, you'll see that palmar grasp disappear as well. And you've got several others. The Babinski is one that we actually have all of our lives. If you run your finger up the arch of someone's foot, so from the just above the heel all the way up to the big toe, with babies, they'll actually grab on. It's kind of like the monkeys holding on to their mamas. They kind of have that monkey reflex because they use their toes to hold on. But as adults, we actually open our feet because we would be moving away from whatever that is. All right. Some babies are just so easy. They go to sleep, they eat. Not all babies. Babies have different types of temperament, which is kind of interesting to me because when you first think of a baby, they don't really seem to have a ton of personality right in the beginning. It takes like 6 to 7 weeks for that to develop, but they actually come out of the womb pretty much with a temperament. And it's a behavioral style. How a child reacts to a situation, how they'll regulate or express their emotions. This is all their temperament. And it can involve characteristics like, do they have a lot of activity level? Are they low level in activity? Do they have routines? They must stick to these routines, or are they willing to be adaptable? They kind of go wherever, do whatever. Having had multiple children myself, I can tell you that no baby is alike. Some babies have very distinct temperaments and some babies have a mixture. So the first one we'll talk about is what's called the easy child, or the easy temperament. And this is a child who's pretty cheerful and adaptable. They can pretty much fit into whatever the routine is. If you change their routine, they're good. Okay. They generally can establish a relationship with other children. It's not that hard to get them to share or work with others. That doesn't mean at that 18-month stage they won't steal toys, but they'll also be willing to give them back. And they're pretty easy to accommodate to a new environment. Unfortunately, the next two temperaments don't have the kindest terms. One is the slow to warm up and the other is the difficult temperament. The slow to warm up child tends to be kind of shy in the beginning, and they will become friendly, but like the name implies, they need a minute to warm up. They don't always react to their environment with a lot of enthusiasm. Sometimes it's kind of like I'll just stay over here sort of thing. And they can adjust to new experiences, but you've got to give them some time. They can be fearful at first or negative, but over time they will decide, hey, you know what, this is pretty awesome and I'm good where I am. Then you have what's referred to as the difficult child. The difficult child tends to have a routine that they don't want changed. They do not, or they have an irregular routine and they're not willing to necessarily adapt to what's needed. They tend to seem to react negatively. For example, if you have to move your baby's nap schedule, that happens by like 30 minutes. They are not going to take it, or they're not going to work with you on it. They're slow to accept things that are new. They tend to have very intense emotional reactions. Sometimes the difficult child can have, for example, gastrointestinal distress, like maybe they have issues with stomach acid or something. And they can get irritated really, really easily. They're not going to want to be around others, and they're really intolerant of change. And again, keep in mind that this can change. Sometimes it can also be a particular time period when this happens. Like a child might be difficult at, we always called it in my household the arsenic hour at 6 o'clock at night. My twins would get really difficult. The rest of the day, though, they were pretty adaptable. So you can have a mixture of these personalities, and it can be based on a lot of things. So the last thing to talk about is what's referred to as the critical and sensitive periods of development. The critical period of development, let me go back over here, is a very strict time window in a developmental time period. And in that time, experience, not experiment, so sorry you guys, experience provides information that is essential for normal development. And this is a time when a performance can permanently be altered. So what that means is during a critical period, if you don't learn certain information or you don't get a certain experience, you might not ever be able to catch up with different activities. Click. In the sensitive period, there's a limited time in where the development can be experienced, and it affects the brain, and it can be pretty strong in affecting the brain, but it's not necessarily the only time. It's just the best time. Okay, so a critical time period is like pretty open and shut. If you don't get that experience in that time period, you may never catch up. A sensitive period is when it would be the best for you to learn, but if you don't catch it then, you might still have a chance of catching up later. Let me give you some examples here. Move myself yet again. In a critical time period, it starts and it stops very abruptly. It's boom, it's open, boom, it's closed. With a sensitive period, though, there's a gradual opening and a gradual closing of it. In that critical period, that's when you are the most able to develop a skill. And it says compulsory, meaning that you really have to do it then. For example, your development of your visual capabilities. From 8 months to 3 years, if you're not really able to use your eyes for some reason, maybe you have something called lazy eye where the eyes don't track like they should, you're going to struggle with visual capabilities the rest of your life if you don't get it in that period. On the other hand, language has what's called a sensitive period. So there's a time where we need to focus on language. It's really from birth to about age 4 or 5. If we're exposed to language after that, we can still learn it, but we're not going to learn it nearly as efficiently, A, and B, there's a chance we may never learn it to the degree that we would have during that sensitive period. All right. So thank you, my friends, for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a great deal about the development of prenatal and newborns. And have a wonderful day.